a teammate of Babe Ruth, which is really cool. And also, who was the guy that played with the Ty Cobb outfield? So, yeah, there's all kind of, and I'm sure someday these three guys will probably be down there. But, all right, so what we're going to do is I'll ask the guys a couple questions, and then you people can raise your hands, and I'll come out, and you can ask these guys a couple of questions as well. So, first question I have is for Jerry. Where are you going to be pitching in 2019? We'll get right to the point.
Oh, I just wanted the Sox, you know, it kind of looked like a letdown. The Sox giveaway. So the Mets did a giveaway for me, like the first 10,000 fans that came to Citi Field this year got a pair of socks that had like a little stamp of my face and name on it. So I know my mom really wanted them, so I signed them, and I figured I'd give those away. I'm sure you guys are sick of getting like baseballs and my cleats. I've been giving those away, so I mixed it up. So those were actually a giveaway at Citi Field, and then I stole a bunch of them before they gave them all away, and I brought some home. So that's one of the cool parts. So sorry. And to answer your question, Chris, my agent is working as we speak to find me a job. Hopefully, you know, close to home. I'd like to end my career in the next couple of years, maybe, you know, playing in Cleveland, Detroit, Cincinnati, Chicago, somewhere close. I've got a son now. Ellis is running around here. He's with my wife. It'd just be better for all of us if we were able to stay close to home.
All right, and well, let's turn over there to Ross. And just first, I know a lot of guys here, they would have liked to got that phone call that they had been drafted. What was that day like? Talk about that experience.
It was pretty crazy. I got to be back and hang out with my family and friends. You know, everyone was at my house, and it was actually pretty funny because, you know, we were waiting around. You know, you're just sitting down waiting. It's on the radio at this point, third day, and I was actually throwing the football with my little brother, and I looked at my Apple Watch, and I saw it on Twitter before anybody called me or anything. So I'm like looking at it. I'm like, all right, I guess I just got drafted by the Mets. You know, I mean, I have no clue. So, and then I finally got the phone call. And I mean, it was awesome just because, you know, my entire family was back home, and, you know, it's kind of rare since everyone's grown up. And so, I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was unreal, you know, something you dream of growing up. So.
How about you, Connor? I knew you were a Tiger fan, which I always liked about you, but it was pretty cool to get drafted by the Reds. Talk about your draft day.
I mean, I was just chilling at home with my mom and my dad, just watching it on my computer, and looking at Twitter. I mean, keeping up to date with my agent and stuff, just seeing what was going on. And then I saw it actually he said, be ready for something here in the next couple of minutes. So just was looking on Twitter and saw it on Twitter as well. And then he called me, and then Reg guy called me too. So just being able to be there with my family and just everything I did to put into it, working hard and stuff. So, I mean, it was a great day.
All right, now I'll come out here, and who has questions out here? I can keep talking all night if you want, but we don't want that. So if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand, and I'll stop by and get the word. I know what I'm going to ask you guys. Oh, here's one over here. So just tell them your name and ask them your question.
My name's Rick, and for Jerry, my question is, they talk about the New York media being brutal. How do you see that?
Thanks for the question, Rick. It is a different animal. You know, I played I was drafted by the Cubs, but in the minor leagues, and then I went to Oakland, and we had maybe 3 beat writers with us every day. And then I went to Washington, and they had 4. And then I went to New York, and we had about 30 beat writers from different papers every day, always around, always in your face. You know, for the most part, they're really good people, and they're really good at their jobs. But there's some that kind of listen in, trying to get the scoop, because in a market like that, the sensational headlines are the ones that get the attention. So they do a lot of leading questions. They're like, so your teammate did this. Did that make you feel like you were mad at him? And hopefully you say yes. So you learn quickly how to handle yourself and really listen to the question. And it's a good thing because, you know, as a Met, your name gets out there. It gives you a lot of opportunities, and the fans are great. But at the same time, there's a little bit of bite to come in your way. I'm sure, Ross, have you gotten any training for that? Because they do like a rookie symposium and then I'm sure in spring training they'll do something.
They pretty much set the whole team down, told us like basically what to say, what not to say in those type of situations, because they talk about the New York media being pretty brutal. And I mean, you saw it a little bit just in Brooklyn, nothing crazy, not like that obviously being a short season team, but yeah, I mean, I can only imagine what it was like there. But
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Appreciate the question.
Okay, anybody else? More questions or?
Chris, I have a question. You were talking to me earlier, and you were like, hey, man, I saw that you got a hit this year, and you look like Babe Ruth batting for the left side. So I want to
talk about that first.
You want me to
'cause we've been,
So, okay.
I know you want me to ask that. And
Yeah,
I was going to get to it
was
later.
yeah,
but
so it came up the other day. We had our union meetings in Dallas, and there was like talk of, maybe moving the DH to the National League. That always comes up because the owners don't want the pitchers to get hurt. And so we had that discussion, and I raised my hand. I was like, yeah, I'm okay with the DH coming to the National League because I just got my hit. I'm done. I don't want to have to face any more pitching. I'm good. I can retire. There won't be a 0 on the back of my baseball card.
well, your not getting hit stories were really good. So tell us the story of your actually getting a hit.
Yeah, this one's way better for me. So early in that week, like 3 days before, we played Washington, and we got beat by like 22 runs, and we had to throw a few position players. So Ross talked about it earlier. Jose Reyes got to pitch, and he gave up like 5 or 6 home runs. So it's not a fun situation to be in. As a position player pitching, it's win-win. Like, you can get people out. If you get people out, you can come in and say, I told you guys, it's not that hard. Everything's easy. And then as a pitcher, when you get to hit, you say the same thing. So 3 days later, we're playing in Philadelphia, and we are winning by like 22. In the same week, we lost by 22. We won by 22. I got the last out I got all 3 outs of like the 7th inning, and I'm coming off, and I'm batting 8th or 9th in the order. And I'm like, all right, so I'll just sit down. I won't hit. So their pitcher starts to get rocked again. And so we're adding on, and my spot's coming up. And they make a pitching change, and they bring in a position player. And our manager, Mickey, comes up to me. He's like, Blev, you want this at-bat? I'm like, heck yeah, I want this at-bat. I was like, this is fair. I don't want to have to face 95. I get to face 55. It's much better. So I see him warming up, and he's just lobbing the ball up there. And I'm like, I hope that's what he does when he gets in the game, because I could do that. First pitch, he lobs it up, and I'm like, all right, base hit to center field. I got an RBI, and I still to this day smile thinking about it. I immediately gave my bat to the authenticator. They gave it like, this is your a bat. I got the ball, so that's one of the highlights of my career for sure.
Now, well, Jerry, you told a good story about your first, I think, bus ride, or when you won that championship in the minors and the bus air conditioning broke down, and I'm sure that you had some nice bus rides. Ross probably had a little more nightlife in Brooklyn than I wanted Connor to talk about going from playing in Ohio State and Columbus and then in Billings, Montana.
He's got a good bus ride story too.
All right, let's hear it.
So we were leaving after a game to head to Grand Junction, Colorado, which was supposed to only take like 12 hours. So it was our longest trip. We were supposed to get there at like 9:30, and we had an off day so we could rest. We ended up not getting there till like 5:30 at night because in the middle of the night, our bus driver's GPS lost connection, and he still thought he knew how to get there. Drives 3 hours the wrong way. So we wake up in the middle of the night, and in the morning, and we're at McDonald's, and we thought we were already here, just getting some breakfast. And while he was driving out the wrong way, he maxed out his hours in a day as well. So we had to wait for a whole new bus to come pick us up, and bus driver. So we ate lunch and breakfast at the same McDonald's. And then our coaches actually had tea times too, so they were just ragging on this dude. He actually got fired once we got back home, he got fired, and he was not the bus driver anymore. So yeah, it took us 18 hours instead of 12. So that was a grind.
Questions from the crowd? Here's another one.
So you talked about Mickey Callaway. Do you feel like he's made a big change as coming from the Indians as a pitching coach? Has that made a big difference for the Mets pitchers, or how has that affected you guys?
Yeah, so he was the pitching coach in Cleveland for a long time, came and now he's the manager in New York. But we hired Dave Island out of Kansas City, who had a great run as a pitching coach there. And Mickey really took a step back. He stayed in his role as a manager, didn't really, maybe behind the scenes a little bit more, talk strategy and that kind of stuff. But he let our pitching coach take the reins and handle that stuff, and he stayed, on the back burner as much as a pitching coach did. But I think there's a hard. That's his first time he's ever managed, so it's hard enough to do that and to not take those, that role as well. So
There's another one.
On the same line, how much do you think a pitching coach has to do with DeGrom winning the Cy Young? I mean, does that influence how outstanding a pitcher becomes? Clearly, DeGrom has a lot of talent, but
yeah. So Jake DeGrom, he won the Cy Young this year. One of the greatest things I've ever seen is him pitch this year. Every fifth day he took the mound, and I knew he was going to go at least 8 innings and strike out at least 10 or 12, and we were going to be losing 1-0. He was unbelievable. But I think as a pitching coach, when you have somebody of that kind of talent, your job is to just harness him, keep him, hold the reins on him a little bit, and keep him focused to where he's able to pitch every fifth day. You want to keep him healthy, and you want to keep him motivated, because we were out of it by then, and you have to make sure that he's still focused. So basically you're just kind of pumping him up all the time and just letting him do his thing. So Jake is an ultimate professional. I think he could have done it, in his backyard with nobody around and still been just as dominant, because he's that kind of guy. But for the most part, you're just managing personalities at that point with that kind of talent.
Ross and Connor, you guys played a pretty good level of college baseball, but when you get to the minors, what did you both have a moment where, like, okay, these are the big boys now, and where you realize you're not in Kansas, so to speak, anymore,
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably my second game. It was the first home game in Brooklyn, and I remember it was like my first at-bat, and we were playing against Staten Island. They're the Yankees short season team, and all of their pitchers are the exact same. Like, they're all probably about 6'4", righties, stock righties, and they throw gas. Like, at Toledo, you see, like, Friday guys are throwing 90, 90, 92. And I remember my first at-bat, I step in, first pitch, swung. I'm pretty sure I swung. It was already in the guy's mitt. And I remember I looked up, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty hard. I look up at the board, and it rang in at 97. I go, all right, yeah, that's that first game, I ended up actually striking out like 3 times. So that was pretty, it's kind of like, all right, welcome to it. Here we go. But learn from it, so.
How about you, Connor?
Well, it was actually my first appearance. Came in, bases loaded, we were getting destroyed. And this dude, it's on a rehab assignment, comes up to the plate, threw a two-seam on the outside corner, thought it was a perfect pitch, thought it was a pop-up, ends up going out for a grand slam. So I knew from there I had some changing to do right there. So yeah, my first pitch.
Well, Jerry told this story last year, but there's a lot of people that weren't here last year on how it came to be that you were a baseball player at Wright State.
At Dayton?
Or, excuse me.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. No, nobody's here, I don't think. Yeah. Yeah, so Andy Knoll here is, has been my best friend since 5th grade at Arcadia. We decided to go to Dayton together. We're roommates going to the freshman dorms, and we both agreed, like, hey, when the baseball has tryouts, we're going to do that. And so we're, in the dorm, and on the poster it says, tryouts for the baseball team this Saturday at 10 a.m. And we're like, all right, here's our chance. And we both go. I think Andy was playing second base. And then I got to pitch off the mound and throw. And, the coaches, like, I'd watched like 3 or 4 people go before me. And it was like 2 pitches, and they're like, all right, next. 2 pitches, all right, next. And I end up throwing what felt like 50 pitches. And they kept going, like, if this is the radar gun, they're like, all right, hold on. And then they, like, changed the battery out. And they're like, is this okay? And then they kept doing it, and I felt like I threw a lot. And eventually, they told me that I'd made the team. And it's, kind of clearly changed my life, My academics took a hit. Sorry, Mom. But it's tough to be a student athlete if the time is involved. But luckily I've been able to still play baseball. You talked about Babe Ruth being a teammate downstairs. These guys are so young. I'm pretty sure they think I played with Babe Ruth. So, I was the second oldest player on my team in New York. Jose Reyes was the oldest at 36. He was 3 months older than me, but he had like 6 years of service time more than I did. But it's a wonderful game to be a part of. The story goes from before that, but that's walking onto the team at Dayton is still some of my teammates are like, you actually walked on, not like for real walked on, and it's fun. It's a fun story to tell. I wasn't like a privileged guy like these guys that get scholarships, and I'm a blue collar. These guys are white collar.
Oh, here we go.
My name's Pat, or Chick, however you know me. I have a question. You mentioned something about your agents. I was just wondering how each one of you guys chose your agent, and is there really Jerry Maguires out there?
Actually, I was kind of late when it came to getting my agent. I think it was May. In May of the draft was in June, and yeah, so I pretty much sat down with a guy that had he represented the last Toledo guy that got drafted. So I just sat down with him. He seemed like a straight shooter, so I was just like, all right. I need someone to try to help me when it comes out, because it was in like less than a month. So he was awesome. He just kind of gathered everything up for me and put it out there and tried to sell me as much as he possibly could in like 2.5 weeks. But that was pretty much how I did. I'm sure his is a little different, but especially because you're the big, so. But
I actually didn't have an agent at the draft. I didn't think I was going to get drafted high enough to even consider not going back to school. But it worked out. I got drafted, early enough, and I couldn't turn down the opportunity to play pro ball. I had an agent. Through some of my teammates my first year in Boise, I had talked to them about their agent. I ended up signing with a guy that didn't fit. And then I interviewed probably 4 or 5 different agencies and agents, and I've been with him since 2007. Bobby, he's friend, family, love him to death. He was at my wedding. I was at his son's bar mitzvah. Like, we're family. Having an agent that you trust and that has your back. Some of the times are, it's tough. It's your livelihood, and we have a small window. I'm lucky to be 35 and still playing baseball. So we have a small window to make, as much as we can and retire and have a whole second life. And so having somebody you trust is very important.
I had some sit-down meetings right before junior season right here at Ohio State, and the main thing was our pitching coach, Dan DeLucia, here had a great guy that he loved, and my head coach, Greg Beals, as well, said that this guy was a great fit. So we had one-on-one meetings, and I thought I just fit well with what he had to say, and just sold me with what he had to say. So I just went with him and went on with it.
I want you guys to, I know a lot of parents today, they're forcing their kids into one sport. A lot of guys think their kid's going to be a major leaguer or something, and this is 3 guys right here are a perfect example of that's not necessary, because Connor was the leading goal scorer in Findlay hockey history, as well as being a great baseball player. Quarterback Jerry Blevins here, basketball, baseball, and Ross was a standout athlete in 3 sports at Van Buren as well. So, guys, talk about what you think is the importance of playing different sports.
Hockey was my favorite sport growing up. I thought that was going to be my future, and for sure hoped on it, but that didn't work out. But I feel like just playing 2 sports, and you're doing something 24/7. You don't need to focus on one sport in high school. Like, if you're that good, you're going to get recruited. So I feel like just being out there and being able to play as many sports as you can is good for yourself.
Yeah, I think it's important because it keeps you well-rounded. I remember you play football, then you're going right into basketball season, and you think you're in shape, because you're in shape for football, and then you realize you don't get time off in between plays in basketball, and you're sucking wind. But it's just a different kind of athleticism to be able to do all three. Plus, I think I would have been burned out if I had to specialize at a young age, because then it becomes kind of a job. It's not as fun, and you don't have to focus on all the time. It becomes tedious if you play it year round. So I think that was important for me.
Yeah, I think Jerry makes a good point, being burnt out. That was something that I never experienced, because, I mean, at least, I don't know about, like, in Northwest Ohio, I felt like once it hit, like, July or August, it was football. Like, that's pretty much what it was. And, I mean, my younger brother plays football. My dad played football. My older brother played football. So it was pretty much, I was going to play football. And, I mean, that was pretty much expected. And I was actually the only guy that played baseball in my family. It just ended up working out like that. But I think it makes you well-rounded. I mean, actually, a funny story is, right when I got to Brooklyn this summer, the first coach I talked to, first thing he says to me, he goes, "Hey, I watch your football highlights." I'm like, why would he watch my Van Buren football highlight? I don't really know. But I mean, first thing he says to me. Yeah. But no, just, I mean, I think it definitely helped me in a lot of aspects, just like not being so one-dimensional. But.
Well, guys, talk about your rookie year. Ross, you had a great one. Led the team in triples, I think. 7 home runs, made the All-Star game, and were actually the MVP of the All-Star game. And I think you were the Mets Rookie of the Year, weren't you, in the organization? So pretty good season. Talk about your first year.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much getting there, it was changing, like, to the city of Brooklyn. Going from Toledo, Findlay, Toledo to Brooklyn was huge difference. I was telling the guys that my field was 5 miles away from my hotel, and it would take at least 45 minutes to get there every single day. When you're used to driving down the country roads in Findlay, getting, 5 miles, that's like 5 minutes maybe. It's definitely different. So, I mean, just getting in a routine was the biggest thing. And once I was able to get that, I just felt like, it just kind of felt like just playing baseball. I mean, not focusing on anything else. And, I just kind of got in a groove, especially towards the end of the year, and just rode it out. I think I just tried to carry some momentum from my year I had at Toledo, and, just trying to keep confidence. And I think that was the main thing that helped me, just trusting myself the whole time.
You guys have a great stadium. I like the amusement parks right out there in center field.
Ross won. You mentioned he won an award. He was the Sterling Award winner. Sterling is like the family that runs. It's like part of the Mets, the Sterling Awards. But he got to come to Citi Field towards the end of our season and be honored with some of the other award winners. 2 of the best prospects in the game, and then, at each level. So I actually got to see him and introduce him to some of the guys, brought him into the clubhouse in New York and show him around, show him that, like, the Brooklyn clubhouse is a little bit different than it is in Queens. Our spreads are a little bit different. Yeah, so, yeah, our dues are a little bit different too, but that's okay.
Well, Connor, too, talk about, I mean, you got the ball every Friday at Ohio State, and then you go to Billings, and I know it seemed like you pitched mostly on the weekends. I don't know if they had a plan to maybe keep you on sort of that same routine, but you went 3-0, had more strikeouts than walks. So talk about your first year in professional baseball.
I feel like the main thing was just getting used to the bullpen, not being that starter where you have all your rest during the week, throwing every, 7 days it was in college. I mean, you got to be ready to throw. There was actually a rule where the Reds, your rookie year, you don't throw back-to-back days if you're a rookie. So you had to just be ready for every other day. So that was just the main thing, was staying healthy and just doing what you can to be ready to be on the mound in that short rest, unlike in college where I had 7 days and stuff like that.
Well, you mentioned that grand slam you gave up. What was the highlight of your year?
Making the playoffs, I would say. Just trying to make that run to get a ring. Maybe just, striking out the side in an inning or something like that.
And more questions? And Ross, I mean, I saw one picture. I think Todd Frazier had a rehab assignment with you, so I saw you and the Todd father. That was pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, he was actually really interactive with the guys too. Like, sometimes you would think some guys may come in big league, kind of big league you, but I mean, it was awesome. He's playing ping pong with the guys. Like, competing, actually getting pretty mad if he's losing, stuff like that. I mean, it was awesome, and he was really generous. He gave some of the guys some of his bats. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of them, but I mean, didn't hold it against him. But no, I mean, I got to play with Syndergaard pitched a game for us, and then so did Jason Vargas. So it was cool, definitely getting to experience, what it's like. I was watching his BP, and it's just like, all right, that's you can tell the difference between a big leaguer like that, and then you're sitting there and you're like, I don't think my ball pops off like that quite yet. So.
More questions out here, anybody? Come on, someone's got to have some questions. How about Ross and Connor? How about what are the for this coming season? Like, when do you guys report? Any idea where you're going to end up? Or
No, I don't find out till spring training. I think I report like around March 1st, something around there. So I won't find out where I'm going next season till then. Hopefully, Dayton close to home. So we'll see.
I had to get a job first. I'll report sometime around Valentine's Day. That's usually what happens. So, and Ross will be the same. Yeah.
Jerry, do you have a timeline when you want to sign by, or
When I want to, or when I get to?
Yes.
No, I mean it'll probably be a slow-moving process, especially the way. I don't know if you guys followed the off season. Last year it was really different the way the free agent system worked. The teams waited for a lot of the veteran guys and tried to kind of bully them into signing a not as lucrative deal for them, and all the guys were all at the last minute. There was probably 35 or 40 guys that deserved to be on a team that didn't even sign before spring training started. It's just a new tactic for the owners and GMs to try to pay us less, which is, it's understandable. It's business. But I anticipate that I'll sign probably pretty late. Hopefully not, but it is what it is. Whitney will probably have to. Whitney, my wife. I'm sorry. She's back there with my son. Okay, she'll probably be a little more stressed out than I am because she has to take care of living arrangements, stuff like that. I just show up with my glove and ready to play. Although I might bring a bat this year just in case.
You should.
Yeah, you never know. 250 career hitter.
Now, how does your agent completely handle that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I tell him kind of like where I would like to go, but it's basically, you gather up who's interested. Right now they're at the GM meeting, so all the GMs in baseball are all kind of together, and then the agents of every player are there, and you kind of go room to room, and you're like, all right, you have these players, I'm interested in him, and him. What are you guys looking for? So it's basically like, here's my resume. What do you guys want? So it'll be interesting. I'm like being courted. I gotta, show off my skills again.
Ross, how about you? Any idea when will you report? What's your?
No, it would pretty much be the same as Connor. I'll find out in spring training. Hoping St. Lucie, which would be high A in Florida, but that's actually where spring training is too. So March 1st, I think, first week of March.
More questions out here? There we go.
This one's for Jerry. Jerry, Greg Myers, my good friend over here with the, looks like Ernest Hemingway.
All right.
He and
I see it.
He and I spent 3 days in Cooperstown in September, and just had a tremendous time. And the thing I was most impressed by at this gathering last year that you were at was when you talked about how before each game you would single out a kid in the crowd and try to make this a day that he would never forget. And when we were at Cooperstown, they have a couple theaters there, and the first day we were there, they had a special presentation by a guy who is in his early 70s, and he told us how when he was about 10 or 12 years old and Roger Maris got traded by the Athletics to the Yankees in 1960, I believe, how he adopted Roger Maris as his favorite player. And the things he did for Roger Maris, like every day he went to the ballpark, he would, when Roger would get out of the taxi cab and try to get into Yankee Stadium, the kids would surround him and he would sign on the way in. And this kid would bring a letter in an envelope every time he went to a game, and he would tell Roger in the letter, "Oh, you're the greatest. You're my favorite player. I hope you hit 2 home runs and all this." And it got to the point where Roger would be in a crowd signing for stuff, and he would just hold his hand out without even looking, and the kid would put in this thing, and then Roger would go in the locker room and read it, and it was just an amazing story how this kid got to be a friend of the Maris family, and he ended up being best friends with the Maris children, and either the best man at their wedding or the godfather to one of Roger's. It was just an incredible story. And he asked for questions in the end, and I didn't want to spoil the story by telling him how in Detroit, when I was 11 years old, I ran into Roger Maris and I had a ball, and he refused to sign it. I
Can't sign them all.
Didn't burst his bubble, but it was just a great story. And I was wondering if you had some similar stories with maybe a special fan that had adopted you. And before you do, I want to just read something. When Mickey Mantle died, Bob Costas delivered the eulogy at his funeral. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you can look for it on YouTube. And it was one of the most amazing, emotional things I've ever seen. And he quoted Kennesaw Mountain Landis, the former baseball commissioner, who said, "All across America, every boy builds a shrine to some ball player, and before that shrine, a candle always burns." And I just would like you to tell us if you have a similar story with some kid.
Yeah, nothing on that level. I'm not on Roger Maris's level to begin with, as I can appreciate. And yeah, I mean, every day you try to pick out someone in the crowd, a kid in the crowd, to interact with, because they spent their money, the families, it costs a lot more to come to a big league game. So you try to interact with a kid, and there are some regulars, some season ticket holders, and kids that I get to see on a regular basis, know them by their first name. There was a kid, so his parents sometimes traveled, so they would come to Philadelphia because it's not that long of a trip. But he was there every day. I saw him. He came to Yankee Stadium, and he had a cast on his arm. And I was like, "What'd you do to your arm, Justin?" And he's like, "Oh, I fell off my skateboard, and my mom said whatever. She was mad at me, but I was more mad that I couldn't pitch because I'm right-handed and he couldn't throw." And so he was, I saw him get teary-eyed because he's not going to be able to play baseball. And as we said earlier, Jacob deGrom ended up winning the Cy Young that year. And I was like, all right, I knew Jake was his favorite player. So I had Jake come up, and he signed his cast. And he wrote, to Justin, good, best of luck. You'll get him the next year. Because Jake had Tommy John, so he talked to him a little bit about skipping a year of baseball and everything being okay. So I remember that brightened his day. He ended up writing me like a letter, a thank you letter, saying, that brightened him up. He was having a pretty down time because it was so fresh. But I get fan mail every year at the field. A lot of fans just send it to the field that you sign, and I actually signed mine. I collect it, and and then I signed it probably last week, I think. And you get, those are the ones, the handwritten ones from the kids are the best part. I get a lot of parents saying, in spring training, you talk to my daughter, and it brightened her day because, everybody's focused on my son because it's baseball, but my daughter's a huge baseball fan, and you went out of your way, to make her feel special, and you ended up giving her, I gave her a ball or something from spring training, and it was just a thank you note, no cards to sign, nothing like that. It just said thank you, so that's meaningful to us.
Jerry, I know I'll tell these people, you'd probably be humble, but I have a friend of mine whose son had a brain tumor, and I contacted Jerry, and you guys won't believe how much stuff Jerry sent him, and his teammates, Bryce Harper. I mean, I was jealous of the autographs and stuff that Jerry sent him, so that's very cool.
I mean, that's what it's all about. When you were a kid and Roger Maris didn't sign your ball, that can leave a rough impression, but I guarantee you most ball players spend a lot of time signing autographs every day. but there's always a few that we can't get to. So, you know, when there's a special moment, somebody that you know that you can go out, most guys are really, you know, really generous with their time.
I'm going to throw a curveball here and put Don on the spot. But
Hey.
I just wanted Don to talk about how cool this is to have a kid from, you taught at Van Buren for 50, 60 years, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But how cool is it to have a kid from Van Buren sitting up there talking to all these people?
It's really cool, and I'll tell you, I'm gonna respond to something Jerry said too. He mentioned Ross blowing out Arcadia in football. How about him striking out a bunch of Van Buren baseball guys?
I'm just trying to even the playing.
Oh, okay. No, I think all three of them, though. I mean, obviously knowing Ross really well in the family is pretty cool. I mean, it's a class act from Larry right on down. But to see these three guys is really something. You know, you don't think about that on a regular basis, how competitive Northwest Ohio is in athletics. And then you look at these three guys. It's just beyond, I don't know, it's not beyond belief, but it's pretty cool to know that we've got some guys that come out of this league. And even the guys at Defiance, I can't remember the names, there's two of them.
John Neese.
And then, another Billingsley, that's right, yeah, exactly. And so Northwest Ohio is really represented. But to know two of you really well, and Connor just by watching, I'm a great hockey fan too, so I know I watched you play hockey. It's pretty cool.
Ross, how cool was it when Coach Masters showed up at Brooklyn to see one of your games this year?
No, that was awesome. I mean, actually, Coach Masters showed up, and then he was my literature teacher at Van Buren. He showed up in Maryland too when we were playing Aberdeen. So it was awesome. I mean, I know when Coach Masters I heard that he was coming, I was so excited just because he was my gym teacher, but he was my coach in baseball and football all my 4 years. And I don't know if I've ever had so much respect for one person, just because I knew if I had any questions or any like life lessons, anything, if I had anything about that, I knew I could go straight to Coach Masters. And, you know, he's just someone growing up, I just always appreciated so much. So just to see him come out in such a big moment in my life, you know, to start my professional career, it meant so much. I mean, it was awesome. It was awesome.
All right, more questions, guys, out here?
I just wanted to say, like, this is an exciting time to be a fan of baseball in this area. You know, you've got two really great human beings, and on top of that, two really talented baseball players. So if you're a fan of the game, which you guys are, and thank you for coming, you know, follow these guys' career because they're going to be bright. And it's easy to root for them, too, because, you know, like I said, they're two really good people. So it's an exciting time to be from this area and be a fan of baseball.
Any more questions out here in the crowd?
My name's Jason. This is for all three of you guys. So tell us just a little bit about how your college years were, because I'm sure at some point, even you go in your freshman, sophomore years, you know, I'm sure there's had to been some doubt. You know, it's like, is this where I'm going? Is this the stars are going to align for me? Am I really going to make this dream happen? You know, because I'm sure a lot of guys go through college ball and that's the end of it. You know, they play 4 years and they're done, but not for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't start off well my freshman year, actually. I mean, I only threw 6 innings, didn't get that much time. So, I mean, coming from high school, you're pitching all the time. You don't know what to expect. So that was tough, but just had to start working hard after that, just take it into the next season. And then, I mean, when I started getting some looks towards the end of sophomore season, then in sophomore summer, going into junior year. So then I had a good junior year, and I thought maybe things could happen from there, and just went from there.
For me, I was like Connor my freshman year. I think I threw about the same, about 6 innings. I was really wild. I just threw as hard as I could, had no idea how to pitch. I just threw. And that carried on into my sophomore year too. And I didn't pitch much then. And when I did, it was like up and down. I'd either do really well or I would do terrible and not help the team at all. It really clicked for me going into my junior year. I had a great fall ball, and then I moved in momentum during the season. I had a really good year, but I never thought I would get drafted until I pitched against the guy that went to University of Richmond, and he was a prospect, and I pitched really well and actually outpitched him that day. So all the scouts there that were there to watch him, contacted me, and I still didn't think I would get drafted. I ended up having to, after the season, drive to Chicago. I was drafted by the Cubs. I had to drive to Chicago in the north side and work out for the team because the scout that signed me, it was his first year, so he had no trust with the team. I was actually the first player that he drafted that was his first player. But I worked out at Wrigley, and I never thought, it's a long odds. So I pulled some ivy off the field, I'm a fan of baseball too, so this is hallowed ground. So, my junior year, I just kind of blossomed at the right time.
Mine was pretty similar. I started pretty much every game my freshman year, but it was pretty average. I was hitting I think 8th in the order. And then my sophomore year, there was actually a time where I swear to God I couldn't see the ball. So, there was definitely some doubt there. But I'd say at the end of my sophomore year, I started coming into myself some and, just kind of found myself at the plate. And then that off season, I dedicated to pretty much the weight room and just training and just kind of just trusting myself more and not, trying to focus on stuff that I can control and not, a strikeout, let it go, that type of stuff, and just kind of stay out of my own head. And I was pretty similar, though, because when I started, blowing up and some of the scouts started hitting me up was because they were there to watch other guys. We were playing against Miami of Ohio, and they had a guy who actually went in the 7th round this year, but my first at-bat, I don't think anybody was watching me at all. And there were 20 scouts there. My first at-bat, I hit a home run off of them, and I come up again, and then all of them have their cameras on. And it's and then after that, we go and play Central Michigan. They had a guy who got drafted this year, and I actually hit 2 home runs off him, and then all of a sudden all the cameras are on. And then, I'm filling out questionnaires like crazy. And that's just kind of how it worked out for me. And that's why I didn't get my agent until so late, because I had no clue I was going to get drafted until pretty much mid-season. So, it's definitely I think that's why it helps me, though, because some of these guys that are at bigger schools, even the SEC guys playing with them this year, they already know. They're already talking about, their freshman year, I'm out of here in 3. Me, I'm shoot, I'm just lucky to be playing here. So, but, it definitely, it was a fun experience, live and learn, and it's all worked out, so.
More questions, guys, or? Oh, we got Johnny over here.
Run over there, Chris.
I'm
You
ready.
got it.
This is for Jerry and Connor. You guys are both relief pitchers. What are your guys' thoughts, I guess, on it seems like everything baseball-wise is moving more towards relief pitchers and obviously pitch counts and stuff like that. Just share some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I imagine Connor, you're probably going to go back into the rotation. We'll see. It's nice that baseball is finally recognizing how important we really are. That's a little, no, but it's true. When baseball first started, when Roger Maris's days, it was your best player is your starting pitcher, and he's going to go your whole game because the talent level isn't as great in the bullpen. Well, now, there's so much talent in the game that a tired starter is not going to be as good as a guy coming in throwing 97 and trying to get 1, 2, 3 guys out. So they recognize that matchups are a little bit different. I appreciate it being one of those guys that the game is recognizing. We used to be pretty much anonymous baseball players, which is okay with me. I still love it. I don't need the accolades and the fame. It's not for me, but it's nice to have my job be recognized, kind of universally that it's important.
I feel like it's a lot different than in college. You want your starter to go out there and go 8, but in Montana, we are seeing the starters go 4 and 5 a lot on pitch count and letting the bullpen get a lot of work. Just because, especially with all these rookies, we had a bunch of them, so they were trying to get out there and show them what they have and stuff like that. To be in that role as a bullpen guy, I had a great time. to go out there, whatever, every other day. So, I mean, it was a good time.
And Jerry, not only did you get your first hit, but you also started a game this year.
Yeah, it didn't go as great as I had hoped. I actually was going to ask for the day off because I had pitched like 4 out of the last 5 games, and I was going in. We had a day game after a night game. My body doesn't bounce back like it did when I was 22, 21. So I'm like, man, I could use a day. So I was going to, see how my body felt, but maybe ask if I can take today off. I get in the door, and it's like 9:30. We have a 1 o'clock game. I'm getting ready to go get breakfast. I'm not even changed yet. And my pitching coach and manager are like standing there as I open the door. I'm like, what's going on, guys? And they're like, hey, how do you feel about starting today? I was like, yeah, okay, see you later. I'm going to go get breakfast. I need coffee. I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, no, seriously, do you want to start? I was like, what do you mean? Like, do you want to pitch? Do you want to start? I'm like, yeah, let's do this. I've never done it before. It's a dream. I was a starter growing up my whole life too until I got to pro ball. I never got the opportunity to see if I could do it. But I gave it a shot. I faced the Dodgers lineup. I gave up a home run, and then I struck 5 out of the next 6 guys out. So if I could have started on like the 3rd hitter, what was hard for me was like the timing. So I'm used to like in the bullpen mid-game, ring, 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 let's get Blevins going. So I get like a minute and a half to get ready and get my adrenaline going. And now I had from 9:30 to 1 o'clock, I had to think about my whole day. I was driving myself crazy. I was like, all right, do I go out now? I'm sitting there in my full uniform and cleats at like 10:45. I'm like, okay, what do I do with myself? I'm like, I can't eat because I don't want to be sick. What if it doesn't sit right? And so I was just nervous the whole time. And that was the part that I forget. Being a reliever, it's done great for me for my career because I have to be ready to pitch every day. So I didn't, as a kid, your first taste of freedom when you get out of college, I'm not going to the bars. I'm staying in because I know I have to be ready to go because I'm trying to be a professional. So it saved me a lot. Plus, I don't have 4 days. If I had a bad outing, I don't have 4 days to dwell on it and then, drive myself insane because that's how my brain works. I have a hard enough time sleeping as is. So, yeah, being a reliever has been great for me.
What advice would you give Ross and Connor on their careers?
Just in general, Ross touched a big point. His junior year, late into his sophomore year, he figured it out that it was getting out of your own head. That's the key, is to be able to trust what you're doing, trust that you're putting in the work, that you know that you've done everything you can to be ready, and then just trust yourself. Don't worry about the scouts in the stands. Don't worry about the radar gun. Don't worry about your number of home runs. Don't follow your stats. Trust your field, trust your teammates, trust your coaches. No matter what, when you hit the ball or every day how you feel, how the ball feels coming out of your hand. Sometimes these guys are pro ball players. Sometimes you're going to throw a perfect backdoor sinker that gets hit for a home run because these guys are good. Sometimes you're going to hit the ball and he's going to make an out, or you're going to hit line drive outs. The key to it, because you play every day, is to forget it. Go home. If you had a bad game, it's okay. Once you wake up the next day, you can't worry about what you did before. You have to stay focused. And because it's a grind, it's a hard sport. There's nothing like baseball. We don't have a week to prepare like football. We have to be ready to go every day. And it's more of a mental game than it is physical.
Do we have any more questions? Oh, there's a couple more. Okay. Always happens when we're winding down. People start thinking of stuff.
So I was just wondering, you were talking about preparing for games and things. I mean, are you guys going in with coaches 3 hours before the game and you're going through everything and you've got your little Rolodexes in your locker where you're keeping track of everything, or is it more just kind of going out there and doing what you do?
For me, I definitely had a routine. We would get it, let's say if we were playing at 7, I would get to the ballpark at about maybe like 12:31-ish for me. And it was usually I'd get there, change, get around, and then I would usually go, and I like doing some like light lifting, maybe do something like get the body going a little bit, and then I would usually go hit like in the cages or hit BP on the field, and we'd do that and then come back. And I mean, it definitely was different for sure because I'm sure Connor can tell you, like in college, it's kind of like you get there a little bit before the game, but like this is your career now, you're there all day, like that's your workplace. So I mean, I definitely had a routine. Like I was going there, and every single day, like I tried to do the exact same thing, just so like, I think that put me in a comfortable place because I knew like Jerry was saying, I think baseball is like such a feel game that, and I think it gets a lot of times it gets overlooked. Like, all right, how do you feel? Like instead of like everyone's focused on like maybe like mechanics and like stuff like that, rather than like, all right, well, how about you just get in a good spot, and if you feel good, then you're gonna play well, you know. But yeah, definitely, I think a routine helped me get to that point. You know, just being comfortable and just being consistent, I'd say.
I feel like making a routine was the biggest thing. I mean, getting there 5 hours before the game is way different in college when you're there 2.5. So I mean, at the right time, I had to figure out where I want to do bands, where I want to do weighted balls and stuff like that. And especially, it's different as a relief pitcher. You don't know when to do weighted balls because you don't know when you're going in. As a starter, you do them right before you're about to long toss and stuff like that. So I mean, just like the whole pregame routine was very challenging to get used to, coming from college. So that was the main thing, is just getting used to pro ball at the beginning.
Yeah, it's the same. Like a starter, you can come in, you're like, all right, I pitched today. Tomorrow I could do a lower body lift, take the day off, then I could do an upper body, and I have another day to worry. As a reliever, you know, you can't take the chance that you're going to be sore like from doing a heavy lower body the day before. And then I got to come in and I got to face Bryce Harper. I'm like, oh, my legs are sore. I lifted yesterday. That's not going to fly in the New York media. They're not going to be like, oh, well, he was sore, so it's okay. So that's it. That's like you're finding how to feel all right, because you're never going to feel, apart from maybe when you first show up, you're never going to feel 100%. So it's, you know, am I able to be effective today? How do I do that? I don't want to get too tired, but I also don't want to, you know, not do anything. So it's a grind. It's a mental grind. So that's the part where becoming a professional, relying on your teammates, talking to your coaches, because everybody there has done it before. So you just kind of lean on each other.
There's another question.
Yeah, this kind of piggybacks what Brian just asked, I think. And I think, Jerry, you will be better suited because you've been in it longer. But the game was always about numbers, but now it's getting into analytics. And have you seen a difference in how you're used? And also, can you go to a game or in a certain part of the game know before you're told you're probably going to go in because of who's coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So being left-handed, my job is to get the other left-handed hitters out. So I know as soon as they post the other team's lineup, I'm like, all right, so their 4 and 6 hitters are left-handed, so that's the section, and they're their best hitters. So that's the section in a close game that I'm probably going to face those 3 guys or some form of one of those. So my focus is, you know, when a team comes in for a 3 or 4 game series, I know all those guys. So I'll watch video on their best left-handed hitters, and if they pinch hit a righty, I want to know who those right-handed hitters are. So I'll learn their tendencies, the technology, like you mentioned now. So I can watch every pitch I've ever thrown from 3 different angles now. On top of that, I can watch every swing any of these guys have taken in the last 10 years. So I'll learn tendencies, you know, how I faced them before, because, you know, I get to face these guys 15, 20, 25 times in my career, so we know each other. So it becomes chess. And that's the preparation that I take every day. So it's knowing, that's part of being a professional, knowing who you're going to face and what time of the game, and then just being ready.
My name's Mike. I'm a big fan of all the baseball movies, and every good baseball movie has a bar scene or a locker room scene where, you know, something fun happens and you like to tell that story. I was wondering if you had any good stories you could share with us.
I have a bunch that are inappropriate for young ears. Man, here, do you guys have, I'm going to think. Yeah. Yeah, locker room or a bar scene? Gosh. Can I tell this? It was in the paper. Is that okay? I can't. Oh, he doesn't understand yet. I'm going to pass. Well, I'll talk to you afterward if you want to know. That'll be better.
Well, it's interesting because my dad was a huge Indians fan, and he went on all the cruises with them and
So yeah, a lot of that's changed too with technology today. You know, we can, everybody's got a camera on them, so you know there's not as much. I don't want to say fun, but tomfoolery maybe. No, there's just, you know, guys are definitely more aware of their surroundings because people are always watching, and there's always, you know, people taking pictures. In New York, like, even I get recognized on the train. Like Whitney and I we'll be walking down the street and somebody will be like, "Hey, do you mind taking a photo?" So you kind of be aware going of all times. But yeah, there's still some stories to be told. Oh yeah, so this year, when you come to the field, you have to wear a collared shirt and pants. So we had a rookie come in wearing sweatpants and a hat. And we told him, like, "Hey man, you can't do that. You know, dress professional." He's like, "Oh, okay." And then the next homestand, like a couple of weeks later, he does it again. So our captain, David Wright, says, "Oh, that's fine. You know, we told you." He's like, "You know, whatever. I see other guys doing it." And you're like, "Well, Jose Reyes has 16 years in the big leagues. You know, he could do it every once. You're not, Jose. You have 16 days. It's a little bit different. Respect the game." So that's, you know, he kind of brushed it off. And David Wright's like, "I'm going to teach this guy a lesson." So he came back. His sweatpants were now really short. His underwear was dunked in the water and then put in the freezer and frozen. And I'm pretty sure his hat was it didn't have a bill on it. But, you know, and I think he had sandals, like flip-flops, and I'm pretty sure the flip-flop got cut. So he came dressed appropriately from there on. I'm pretty sure David probably bought him a nicer pair of shoes to be like, "Hey, this is what you wear to the field." But he learned his lesson. I mean, those are good. Those are good. So he talked about Todd Frazier being like friendly. So there's no more hazing. Like when I was a rookie, I got dressed up and, you know, paraded down the street. And they're not allowed to do that as much anymore. We weren't even allowed to do it at all in New York. But on the bus, it all goes. So on our team bus, like when we get to a city from the airport to the team hotel, usually between 20 minutes and 40 minutes. Todd Frazier's our outspoken leader. He's not afraid to speak, so he's always good in those situations. So Todd is on the mic, and we get our rookies to come up and tell us, you know, embarrassing stories, sing a song, all that kind of stuff. So those are how we get, you know, the rookies to stay humble and learn to enjoy the game. You learn a little bit about your teammates, and you see which ones think they can sing and which ones really can't.
Any more questions? Or?
Have you guys read Ball 4?
I don't think so.
They're not that old, Chris.
What's Ball 4?
That's where all the stuff, the tomfoolery.
Someone ratted people out? How dare they?
Jim Bouton in about 1972.
Gotcha. Oh no, yeah, those things have changed.
He pitched for the Yankees in the 60s. So
Jim Bouton, yeah, he does a lot of MLB Network stuff still.
I want to know what your favorite all-time best baseball movie is, and do any of you have a real superstition that you wear something that, you know, the day you go in, or you eat something the night before?
I would say Bull Durham. Superstition. Huh? Oh yeah. Never step on the white line on the baseball field. Never. I've never done it.
So my favorite baseball movie kind of fluctuates, but I think Major League is my favorite of all time. I just have, apart from it being a really good movie, memories of watching it as a kid with my brother. You know, it just has a little bit of nostalgia for me. And then superstition-wise, mine kind of fluctuate. Like I'll have a superstition, then if I have a bad outing, I'll kind of switch it up. But there are things where I've showered in the exact same shower for all 4 years I've been in New York. I'll wait for somebody to get out, or if he's a rookie, I'll be like, "You're in my shower," and he'll move over. But you know, we're creatures of habit, and when you're at the same ballpark every day, you know, you kind of develop these things. You know, routines. People call them routines, but they're really superstitions.
I'd say my favorite baseball movie is probably Everybody Wants Some. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say like superstition. I'd try to not call it superstition, just because like yeah, I try to call it more just routine. So there's definitely stuff I do that I try to keep doing it and make sure it's in the right routine. But I feel like if I call it superstition, then I'm like doubting myself and I'm saying that it's because of something else.
The same socks, right foot first, left foot,
No. It's I mean, I do like the same thing every single time on deck. Like hold my bat the same way. Like it's just a comfort level almost. Like, you know, like I don't. For some reason, when I'm putting on my gloves, I don't set the bat down. I've had people try to like. I usually put it in between my legs and just get it going. I don't know. People make fun of me for doing it. I don't know why, but it's just comfortable. I guess.
If the bat fell, would that mess you up for that at bat?
It would for sure. I'd for sure striking out.
So that's superstition by definition. There's majority of ball players have some type of superstition. I remember, like Ross talked about Todd Frazier and Noah Syndergaard coming out for rehab. When I was in low A in Peoria, Illinois in 2005, I was with the Cubs. Nomar Garciaparra came down, and he is, I don't know if you guys remember him, but this is, every at bat took like 10 minutes because he'd do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he would tap his toes. Every time he changed from dirt to grass, he would tap each toe on his way and then vice versa. And then every single step, he would have to put both feet on. So we were in Kane County, which is in Illinois, playing, and he had to use the restroom, and the locker room's like 40 steps up. He was up like 5th. He didn't make it down in time because he took so long with both feet on each, and then back down. We're like, Nomar, you're up. He's like, I'll be there in probably 30 seconds, you know. And he's you give him a break because he's one of the greats, but you know, everybody has their own thing.
I think I read, Jerry, you have a least favorite baseball movie too. Am I correct?
So he talks about Everybody Wants Some. If you guys haven't seen it, it's an incredible movie. It's really cool. It's not your prototypical baseball movie. It's about like, I think it's 1980. It's like 3 or 4 days before the college baseball season starts at a school in Texas. It's very unique from a baseball player standpoint because we always get there before school starts, and they just get it right. A lot of the characters on the team, that feel of before campus is opened up for the rest of the students, it feels great. But I had tweeted out that like I had watched that movie and I was like, I think